Okay, welcome everybody to today's class. Today we're looking at chapter 2 of Spinoza's Ethics. So it's a philosophy class again. If you're looking for a grammar class or a vocabulary class, they'll be coming later in the week. I'm going to do chapter 2 of this book. It's called Ethics. It's by the philosopher Spinoza. So I wanted to talk about chapter 2 today. And in chapter 2, he deals with the origin and nature of the mind. Chapter 1 was about God, but we learned in that first lesson that he could have used the word God, he could have used the word nature. He does explicitly say God or nature, and he could have used the word cosmos, I suppose, or universe, because really he's referring to everything that is. But he has to be careful with the word that he chooses, because obviously people already have a lot of ideas connected to these words. And so when you say God to one person, it could mean something completely different to when you say God to another person. So he's trying to be as clear as possible. And being honest, he does a very good job on a very difficult theme. So we saw that he's really hypothesizing this substance. This is what we saw in the first class in chapter 1. He has to have this idea of substance because he points out that if we believe in finite things, and most people do believe that there are finite things like bodies and planets and stars and animals and rocks and blades of grass or whatever, obviously there are these finite things around us. And if we believe in these finite things, well, they can only exist in something which is infinite. And he considers that thoughts, ideas are finite things, and extended stuff is a finite thing. And so both of them must exist as different expressions of the same one substance, the same one thing which is always here, and it's only thanks to that thing being here that any of us can have any ideas at all or even have a body. It's only in thanks to this infinite thing that he calls substance, but perhaps which you might call the universe, or if you're more theologically minded, you might call God. Okay, so I think it's quite hard to disagree with him here. If you believe that things are finite, and I don't think anybody out there is going to say, no, I don't believe things are finite, but maybe there are some. But if you believe in finite things, in finite objects around you, they must exist in something bigger than they are. And if it's just another finite thing, well, that finite thing must exist in something bigger than it is. And in the end, you get to this infinite thing called substance, but you could call it a number of other words if you wanted to. And so that's really what I was trying to explain in chapter 1. It's quite a difficult idea to comprehend in many ways, but I hope that I made that clear in the first class. And so he believed that all of this that made everything else possible, this God or this nature or this cosmos, he believed it was infinite and eternal. It was self-caused. Nothing can cause it because it's infinite and eternal. And so it's self-caused. Only finite things, only limited things can be caused by other finite things, and they always are, and so on and so on and so on into infinity. And of course, finite things will always be limited. So in chapter 2 is called The Origin and Nature of the Mind, but a lot of chapter 2 goes into the origin and nature of extended stuff. It doesn't just go on about extension, it goes on about thought as well, but he has to talk about extension as well, because he explains that extension it's like the mirror of the world of thought. The world of extension is the mirror of the world of thought. It's actually expressing one and the same substance. So it's hard to say if he's a monist or a dualist. He believes in one substance, and in that sense he's usually called a monist. However, he doesn't believe that thought can be reduced to extended stuff, and extended stuff can't be reduced to thought. So he had this idea which was very different than a lot of other people that were looking at these kind of things at the same time, who were thinking about these kind of things. He claims that the world of thought is the mirror of the world of the body, and that the mind is essentially the idea of the body. And the body will always accompany the mind for that reason, because the mind is the idea of the body. And so they both come together at the same time. They're parallel. They don't have a causal relationship to each other. The world of mind can't affect the world of the body, and the world of the body can't affect the world of the mind. The only things that can cause other things in the world of the body are bodies. And the only things which can cause or have a logical relationship to other ideas in the world of mind is other ideas. Okay, so this is why he's very often got this word associated with him, the idea of parallelism. That the world of the mind runs in parallel to the world of the body. And he often says the following statement. He says it in a few different ways, but he says it a number of times throughout the book. So clearly this is at the heart of his parallelism. He claims that the logical order and connection of ideas is exactly the same as the causal order that exists between things, that exists between physical things. Okay, so that's not necessarily something which is obvious, and it seems quite difficult to understand that the connection in the world of ideas and the world of mind is exactly the same as the connections, the causal connections in the world of the body. So it's quite difficult to understand what he means here, but he does give some examples in chapter 3 of why some people believe in free will. And he believes that some people believe in free will because they are ignorant of the causes of their own desires and wills and inclinations. He explains that a drunken man, for example, he believes he acts out of free will when he says something which he really regrets later. However, he's actually just ignorant of the causes, the things that led to him making that poor statement, that regretful statement. Now, of course, it's partly the alcohol that he consumed and a number of other factors. But you shouldn't really see it as we shouldn't really reduce his ideas to physical things. So we can't reduce his ideas to the alcohol, for example, because alcohol is a physical thing. And so we have to always remember with Spinoza's parallelism that the mind mirrors the body, and that, for example, the mind's capacities, what the mind is capable of doing, he claims that it mirrors the capabilities of the body. The more complicated a body is, the more ways that it can be affected by the outside world, the more complicated its corresponding mind will be, and the more capable the corresponding mind will be of having ideas, the more complex ideas it will have. And this is why Spinoza is very often associated with panpsychism. Now, what does this mean, panpsychism? Panpsychism is the idea that everything has a mind in some kind of way. So if anybody's watched some of the earlier videos in this course, you might remember Thales, the first philosopher, claiming that even the magnet has a soul. Yeah, even the magnet has a mind in some kind of way. Well, I think that Spinoza is saying something fairly similar here, although he certainly doesn't use the word soul in his book. He avoids that word on purpose, certainly. He's using the word mind. But Spinoza certainly believes that all bodies have a mind. Mind and body come together. They're two sides of the same coin. Everything that exists is indeed idea and thing at one and the same time. Everything is mind and body at one and the same time. So, for example, animals certainly, according to Spinoza, have a mind. I think that quite often nowadays we think of animals as machines, and I think this is partly due to science. We think of animals as machines and people as some kind of superior being that has some kind of special mind that means it's capable of making its own decisions at a whim. Yeah, it's got free will, and that's not necessarily the case. But I believe that it's how a lot of people see animals nowadays. They see them as something which, certain things that don't have minds, whereas people do. Well, for Spinoza, animals certainly have minds, and for me as well, animals certainly have a mind, They're certainly capable of having ideas. And when I look at an animal, I see it as completely different from looking at a machine, where a machine certainly doesn't have a mind, in my opinion, or if it does, it's a far simpler idea of a mind. And so this is the whole point which I'm dealing with here, that the more complicated a body is, and of course the human body is much more complicated than something simple like an asteroid or a meteor, something like that. It's more capable of receiving impressions, it's more capable of doing a lot of different things. We don't know all of the things that bodies can do so far. We still don't know that, and Spinoza points that out. Obviously, bodies can do all sorts of things when you think about what humans are capable of, and this is why humans have a mind which is also far more complicated than the mind of a rock. Because a rock can't be, it can't receive lots of different impressions, it can't act in lots of different ways. However, animals can. And this is why their mind is more developed, because the mind mirrors the body. They have no causal relationship, but they mirror each other. He also explains that active ideas mirror active states of the body, and passive ideas mirror passive states of the body. So here the idea is that, you might remember from the first class that he separated active and passive. Generally this was passive, the finite modes of existence, and this was active, the substance in which it all exists in. But adequate ideas, which really he means true ideas or correct ideas, logical ideas, like the idea of a circle or the idea of a triangle, he very often uses geometry to show an example of an adequate idea, of a well thought out idea. And it's actually lying at the heart of the book. It's supposed to be a geometrical approach, this book, to ethics, the human mind and the cosmos. So he sees geometrical ideas as extremely logical, and these would be adequate ideas, and they mirror active states of the body. So again, this parallelism is everywhere in Spinoza. He always sees the body and the mind as following parallel lines on the same course. And when he talks about different emotional states, for example, which certainly the ideas that arise from different emotional states, he puts them in parallel with states of the body, certainly. So I can try and find a few examples on the page which I got up to, which is actually in chapter 3. This is from chapter 3 and not chapter 2. But he explains that we believe we're free because we're unconscious of the causes, the true causes of our ideas, or the true causes of our bodily states. And so we believe that we choose different things, but really our desires were caused by other desires, which were caused by other desires, which were caused by other desires. And in this sense, the mind is not free, and neither is the body. He points out that it's not in the power of the will, and this is something that you should all think about. It's not in the power of the will for example, to make the body fall asleep. Try it. Try just willing yourself to sleep, and it won't happen. You can't do that because the mind doesn't have a causal relationship with the body. He also points out that it's not within the province of the will to decide whether to remember or forget something. You just can't. You can't say, I want to remember this, so I'm going to remember this, or I want to forget that, so I'm going to forget that. That's not how it works. And so this is again showing that the world of mind is not connected. It's separate from the world of the body, but it runs in parallel to the world of the body. Let me just read out one part which I think is very a good summary. So, thus an infant believes that of its own free will it desires milk. An angry child believes that it freely desires vengeance. A timid child believes that it freely desires to run away. A drunken man believes that he utters from the free decision of his mind words which, when he's sober, he would willingly have withheld. Experience teaches us, no less clearly than reason, that men believe themselves to be free simply because they are conscious of their actions and unconscious of the causes whereby those actions are determined. And he goes on to say, everyone shapes his actions according to his emotion. Those are who are the assailed by conflicting emotions know not what they wish. Those who are attacked by any emotion are readily swayed this way and that. All these considerations clearly show that a mental decision and a bodily appetite or determined state are simultaneous and are one and the same thing. So they certainly are one and the same thing in terms of substance, but they don't have any causal relationship to the other realm. And in that sense, he separates the two realms. Really, he's following Descartes, but he's arguing against Descartes because Descartes seemed to say that the locus where mind could affect body and body could affect mind, it was somewhere up here in the pineal gland. He actually gave it a physical location, Descartes, and this has been argued, this still discussed today, certainly, this idea that the centre of the mind is somewhere here in the head. That's certainly something Spinoza would disagree with. Okay, lastly, he does make a distinction between ideas and words or images. He considers words and images sounds and pictures, and so they're bodily motions. Ideas, on the other hand, these are thought, and ideas, they involve an affirmation or a negation. Okay, this is very important. It's at the heart of what an idea actually is. It involves an affirmation or a negation. So the idea of a triangle involves an affirmation of a shape of that particular size with those kind of angles that add up to 180 degrees, the internal angles, and you're affirming that that is what a triangle is. Okay, so it involves that affirmation. And he talks about a circle in nature and the idea of a circle as being in parallel. So you can see that the general idea in chapter 2 is that these two parts of substance, they are reflecting the same one substance and that they run together in parallel. And so even though one can't have any effect on the other, they are running together in parallel. The order and connection of thoughts is exactly the same as the order and connection of ideas. Okay, I don't think I've got anything else to add to that, but I hope that can demonstrate why he didn't believe in free will and why there's no free will in any of his philosophy. He does now go on to talk about what freedom means for him, because he does believe in a certain form of freedom, and it's related to these active ideas and active states of the body. But nonetheless, generally speaking, he doesn't believe in free will. He believes that the world is determined just as thought is determined in one particular direction. Okay, thanks everybody for listening to that. We're going to go on and do lessons 3, 4 and 5 in future, but I think the next few classes will be about sentence structure and things like that again. But I won't forget about Spinoza. I will come back to him, so if you're interested in this, please come back for more classes. So thanks everybody for watching, and I hope to see you all soon.